liked or hated. There was nobody in the middle. So a lot of people that, now pay attention to this, a lot of people that didn't like Roosevelt, didn't like him, thought they should nominate him for vice president. Why? Why would people who really didn't care for Roosevelt push for him to be nominated for vice president under McKinley, who probably is going to win this election? Yeah, but why would people that didn't like him do that?
So he didn't stand a chance of being president?
Well, you know, that's interesting you say that, because he ends up being president because of this. But this is a weird story. I will just give you a preface to tell you that he had been elected governor of New York right after the Spanish-American War. So he's serving as governor of New York. Why would people that hated him want him to be the vice presidential candidate, hoping that what Daniel just said doesn't happen? Who has more power? Maybe a governor of a big state in the Union, Senate Majority Leader, member of the House? Who has more power politically, them or the vice president?
The governor.
You'd think the vice president or second command, but really the vice presidency is like falling off the face of the earth politically. You ever hear anything that Pence does? Really? Lyndon Johnson, I'll give you an example. Lyndon Johnson was vice president under John Kennedy. Lyndon Johnson was the Senate Majority Leader prior to being elected vice president. Those years as vice president, according to his family, were the most miserable years of his life because he lost power. He had much more power as Senate Majority Leader than he did vice president. So these people that didn't like Roosevelt are thinking, if you want to get the guy completely out of politics, let's nominate him for vice president, then we have to worry about him screwing up New York. I mean, that's really what they thought. Okay? So again, many Republicans who didn't care for Roosevelt really wanted him to be nominated for the vice presidency to kind of push him out of active politics. Well, Theodore Roosevelt wasn't a dumb man. He's thinking to himself when they approach him about the nomination, I'm not sure I want to give up this governorship of New York to be the vice president. But later his ego gets to him a little bit, and the chance to be vice president of the United States, he finally agrees to be put on the nomination. Okay? So, for the Republicans, it's going to be President McKinley for president, again, re-elected, and then it's going to be Theodore Roosevelt, governor of New York, for vice president. Okay? The poor Democratic Party is just not doing well. Guess who they nominate again for the presidency? This will be the third time. No. The third time he hadn't won yet. So I've already lost twice. William Jennings Bryan is nominated again by the Democrats. This guy is a two-time loser. He's lost the last two times he's ran, and he doesn't look any better now because he's running against a very popular incumbent president. So William Jennings Bryan. So here's how the election goes, the campaign. What does William Jennings Bryan do during the campaign? All these months of campaigning, what's he do? It's all over the place, right? He's campaigning all over the country. What's McKinley doing? Because he's so confident of victory. He's just sitting in the White House. He doesn't even hardly campaign. You can't even call his actions a campaign. He just sits in the White House, does his good job, stays around the White House, while William Jennings Bryan's running all over the country. Well, McKinley knew what he was doing, because when the election day came, he crushed Bryant, 292 electoral votes to 155. So McKinley is very popular. He gathers in 292 electoral votes to Bryan's 155. And Bryan becomes a three-time loser in the presidency. So again, McKinley sits tight to the White House, doesn't do much campaigning, still wins the election easily, 292 to 155. Now, there are other people on the other side of the fence, Daniel, about Theodore Roosevelt being vice president. And one prominent Republican said, don't any of you realize that there is only one life between that madman and the White House? And how prophetic he will be. Because we're going to have another political assassination here, and Theodore Roosevelt's going to end up being President of the United States. So those that want to keep him out of active politics, how'd that work for him? Not very good. And those that were concerned about him becoming president, how'd that work out for them? Not very good. Okay? So that'll take us then to the profile on President McKinley, and we'll get to this assassination that I'm referring to. Profile on President William McKinley. Oh, no. Nope. We'll get done about Tuesday of next week. Okay, William McKinley was born on January 29th of 1843 in Ohio. He was born on January 29th, 1843 in Ohio. Another president from Ohio, right? McKinley would tell you the last name of the year, what ancestry? McKinley.
Irish.
Irish, very good. His great-great-grandfather came to America from Ireland in 1743. So his family is one of the original movers and groovers to the American soil. So he came, he was of Irish ancestry. His great-great-grandfather sailed to America in 1743 from Ireland. 1743, a long time ago. So the McKinleys came over on the first boats, so to speak, okay? He grew up in Ohio, in Niles, Ohio, if you care. And he went to elementary school there, and he went to high school there, and finally decided to go to college, and he went to nearby Allegheny College. But he couldn't stay there very long, he had to come home. So he goes to elementary school, he goes to high school, does pretty well. Decides he's going to enroll at Allegheny College. But he doesn't stay there very long, and he's got to come home. Daniel, why has he got to come home?
He's a working man.
No. What's going on in history at this time? Civil War. So he has to come home from college with the outbreak of the Civil War. Now, do you kiddos remember when Lincoln asked for 75,000 volunteers? He was actually the first man from Niles, Ohio to volunteer. He was recorded as the first volunteer from his hometown of Niles, N-I-L-E-S, Ohio. So when President Lincoln asked for 75,000 volunteers at the outbreak of the Civil War, William McKinley was the first man from his hometown to volunteer. Now, his job in the Civil War was unique but risky. His job was to deliver both food and supplies to soldiers in the field. And you might think to yourself that delivering supplies to soldiers in the field and equipment would be an easy job. If you were a photographer or a news reporter in the Vietnam War, where would you find yourself to take those pictures that everybody wanted to see? On the front lines. You were at very much risk if you were a photographer or a newsman in Vietnam. Well, this wasn't any different. If you were delivering supplies to major battles and equipment, you'd be in the middle of the fight. And because of bravery that he showed during the Battle of Antietam, delivering these food and supplies, he was promoted to the rank of second lieutenant. So he was a person that supplied food and equipment, supplies to soldiers on the front. It was a dangerous job, and because of the bravery he displayed under fire at the Battle of Antietam, he was promoted to the rank of second lieutenant. He eventually left the Civil War with the rank of major, so he did move up in rank. So he eventually left the Civil War with the rank of major. Well, in 1871, he does two things. He enters politics and he marries a young lady by the name of Ida Saxton. So in 1871, he makes the decision, two big decisions in his life. One is to get married to Ida Saxton, and the other to enter politics. His first political position was he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Okay, he was elected to the House of Representatives. In 1876, he also served as governor of Ohio as well. So he had good political experience, which led to him being elected president, remember, 1896 and 1900. So he was first elected to the House of Representatives in 1876, served some terms in there. Then he was elected governor of Ohio, served that position for a while. And we all know that he was elected president in 1896 and re-elected in 1900. Well, on September 6th of 1901, President McKinley was in Buffalo, New York at a speaking engagement. On September 6th of 1901, President McKinley was in Buffalo, New York at a speaking engagement. After the speech, he reached out to shake hands with a supposed supporter. The man was hiding a concealed revolver in a handkerchief around his hand, and when he went to shake the president's hand, he shot him twice. So when the president reached out to shake hands with a supposed supporter, he was shot twice by the man who was hiding a concealed revolver in a handkerchief in his right hand. McKinley was immediately rushed to a local hospital for emergency surgery, but unfortunately died of his wounds 8 days later on September 14th of 1901. Had quite a string of assassinations, didn't we? So, McKinley was immediately rushed to a hospital for emergency surgery. Unfortunately died 8 days later on September 14th, 1901, and was eventually buried in Canton, Ohio. So again, when the president reached out to shake hands with a supposed supporter at a speaking engagement in Buffalo, New York on September 6, 1901, he was shot twice by a man who was hiding a concealed revolver and a handkerchief in his right hand. President McKinley was immediately rushed to a hospital for emergency surgery, but died of his wounds 8 days later on September 14, 1901, and was laid to rest in Canton, Ohio. The president's assassin was Leon F. Czolgosz. Leon F. Czolgosz, who was later electrocuted for the murder of President McKinley. The president's assassin was Leon F. Czolgosz, who later was tried, convicted, sentenced, and electrocuted for the murder of President Kennedy. How'd they give the death sentence to people prior to this? They hung them. So we have this new invention, this death by electrocution. Anybody you guys ever see The Green Mile, the movie The Green Mile? Nobody in here has seen the movie The Green Mile? Seriously? Have you? Well, you got to watch that if you get bored someday, because it's all about a prison that is a death row, and it's one of the first electrocution machines they had. It was crazy. They would take a sponge, and they would get it wet, and they put the sponge on top of the person's head, and they would clamp this dome thing on its head and kind of secure them to this bench and throw electricity into their brain through this electric chair. One of the first ones ever. You should. I mean, it's a good story, but it would tell you that. Well, after the president had died, Vice President Theodore Roosevelt made his way to Buffalo shortly after he had died, and he was sworn in as the 26th President of the United States. So shortly after President McKinley died in Buffalo, New York, Roosevelt arrived there, made his way to Buffalo, and was sworn in as the 26th President of the United States. Therefore, kiddos, he holds the distinction of being the youngest man ever to be President of the United States at the age of 42. John F. Kennedy will be the youngest ever elected at 43. Theodore Roosevelt was the youngest man ever to hold the office of the presidency when he assumed the presidency after McKinley's death at the age of 42. So here, a trivia question: who was the youngest man ever to be president? Theodore Roosevelt. Who was the youngest man ever to be elected president? John Kennedy. Okay? I help you on Jeopardy. Some guy in Jeopardy's going crazy. You've been listening to that? Some guy in Jeopardy's been, I mean, you usually win about, 20, 30,000, then you get to play until you lose. This guy's won 1.2 million. He's been there like forever. Last night I watched him win like 74,000. You know what he does? You ever watch Jeopardy? You know what that means? He doesn't go to 200, 400, so he goes right to the bottom. He takes them all, you know, and then hopes to get a double. If he ever gets a double Jeopardy, he bets everything. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. He's made a new world record, 1.2 million he's made, and he's still on.
So if he loses, does he lose like everything?
No, if he loses, he just loses that game and can't go. Anything he's won. He gets to keep. Yeah, it's crazy. If you're into Jeopardy, watch it tonight. He'll be on again. It's unbelievable the knowledge this guy has. I like to watch it if it has history stuff, so I'm pretty good at it. But when you have British emperors or whatever, I don't do so. All right, we'll finish this thing up here. And this is a fairly long subtopic, but it does finish us up. And that's a profile on President Theodore Roosevelt. So we'll probably get through some of this today. Oh, where are we at? We're about done here? Let's just stop, shall we? We'll just stop today and we'll start on that on Monday. And it'll probably be a couple-day lecture because we're going to tell you a lot of things about President Roosevelt. Okay? Perfect.